Today we're talking about our fifth principle, mutual respect and appreciation. So I'd just like to describe a little bit what mutual respect looks like. Mutual respect has a lot to do with being able to talk openly and honestly, listening to each other, valuing each other's feelings and needs. Go ahead.
And also, we understand respect is a very important principle of Vaishnavism, and it's the essence of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's quintessential verse that one should be more tolerant than the tree, devoid of all false prestige, and ready to offer all respects to others. So one has to have this kind of respect to develop love of God and attachment for the holy name. So it's a very essential part of Vaishnavism, and that respect is also very important in marriage. And in very close relationships, it's very important and essential to understand that respect has to be not just one way, it has to be mutual. Sometimes there's a bit of a misconception about what a Vedic marriage is, and sometimes devotees, or especially sometimes men, will think that a Vedic marriage means the wife should respect me, the wife should be my servant, and she should do everything I say. But according to Vaishnavism, respect is something very mutual. I'll read a very interesting thing that Srila Prabhupada said in a lecture, New York, 1966. He said, suppose if you love somebody, you simply take from him, but you do not give. Oh, do you think that is very good? No, it is not good. That is not love. That is exploitation. If I simply go on taking from you, and if I don't offer you anything, that is simply exploitation. So love means you must take, you must give. So that's very much the picture of Vaishnava love in relationships, and especially marriage. And we mentioned in earlier sessions how Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur had mentioned that when looking to get married, both husband and wife should only accept someone as a spouse who they see as a better servant of the Lord than themselves. So how are you going to do that? Obviously, the only way is if there's that mutual respect.
And how mutual respect shows up is that we express interest in what's happening in our partner's world. We ask questions about their day-to-day life. We respond to their conversations, their bids for connection. When we fail to respond to the other person, that's showing disrespect. And over time, that can create serious damage in relationships. So, things can be just as simple as, what was your day like? There has been research done that if partners fail to connect or respond when the other person's trying to make that connection, and if they do that 86% of the time in their relationships, research shows up that divorce is following very quickly. So a big part of respect is to express interest and be attentive to the other person's needs and opinions.
And one of the challenges in close relationships is we tend to become familiar. Mm-hmm. And obviously in friendships, we're very familiar and friendly with the people we love. but there's a kind of familiarity where we become too casual and forget the value of the relationship. And that can be very detrimental to relationships, because in that state of being overly familiar, sometimes we may not treat those we love with the most respect. So Vaishnava mutual respect means that I respect my wife and she respects me, but it's not just about me and her. It's about me and her and Krishna, who's also in the picture up here. And so if I'm disrespecting her or she's disrespecting me, we should consider, how does Krishna feel about that? Because Krishna, he's not separate from our life, even though we may not be realizing it. So that respect in Vaishnavism means that we see all living entities as a part and parcel of Krishna, and everyone is worthy of our utmost respect. And unfortunately, sometimes because we become too familiar and too casual, we tend to forget that connection with Krishna, and we sometimes interact in ways that may not be disrespectful. And
Respectful.
And that doesn't mean that we won't have differences of opinion. It doesn't mean we won't have disagreements. It doesn't mean there won't be challenges. But what it means is that we work through those difficulties and challenges and differences of opinion with respect.
Mm-hmm. So when disrespect enters into a relationship, we tend to be critical and blame. But when we're respectful, we're very gentle in conflict. We avoid this criticism and blame, and instead we just focus on requesting what we need. So instead of me saying, you never help around the house, I could say, would you mind taking this garbage out? So a big part of respect is being that gentle in conflict. And when we can remain positive in conflict without criticizing, becoming defensive, shutting down, acting superior, instead we can deal with respect, humor, interest, openness, and we accept influence from the other person. That's a big part of showing respect. We acknowledge the other person's views, feelings, ideas, needs. These are all very positive responses. And if we can respond positively, even in conflict, that's a really good sign of showing mutual respect and having a positive, healthy relationship.
I should just mention also now that we can take questions. If you have any questions, you can enter them into the chat box here, and we can respond. And in terms of respect too, if we consider Srila Prabhupada, he was a personality who, by his spiritual demeanor, he commanded the utmost respect from all his disciples. But at the same time, we see Srila Prabhupada, he was actually very respectful to his disciples and very much considerate of their health, how their families were doing. And as Uttama was saying, sometimes he would even, he would be interested in their opinions. Prabhupada would ask disciples sometimes for opinions when he was making decisions. So Prabhupada exhibited that respect, giving that respect to others, although he, by his demeanor, commanded the utmost respect. And because Srila Prabhupada had that reciprocal mood with us, that made us even more respectful and more dedicated to Prabhupada and wanted us to serve Srila Prabhupada even more. There's a famous incident where Srila Prabhupada, he told some of his godbrothers once about Mother Malati, and he told them, she would slit her throat for me. And he said, and I would slit my throat for her. So it was a very wonderful, loving, mutual relationship there. And I'll say something about appreciation.
Yeah.
Okay. And so the other part of this equation is the respect, this mutual respect and mutual appreciation. And we've talked in previous videos about the importance of appreciation. And we compared that to developing what's sometimes referred to as a very positive, healthy, emotional bank account. That in your relationships, if you have this attitude of gratitude and you're expressing appreciation and embracing that appreciation in your heart, then your relationships actually develop value. So it's like a bank account that accumulates. And when you have this attitude of mutual appreciation in a relationship, even there are those moments where we have difficulties or we have disagreements, because there's this culture of appreciation, that appreciation eclipses those challenges. So that doesn't mean the challenges disappear, but it means the challenges are seen in a much different perspective. So, and the perspective is something like, might compare to my hand. If my hand is the problem, and if I'm very much appreciative of you and we have some disagreement, the disagreement is like this. It's like my hand in the distance. I guess it would be more like this, the hand in the distance. But if I don't have this culture of appreciation towards you, when that challenge or difficulty comes, which is again is like my hand, it's going to seem like that. All you're going to see is the difficulty and the challenge, and you won't see anything good about me. So the challenge is still the same challenge, but the perspective changes when we have that culture of appreciation. And in marriage, Srila Prabhupada said once how, he said in India, like sometimes there's a big thunderbolt, but there's no rain. And he said sometimes husband and wife, they have some disagreement. And he said it's like a little thunderbolt, and the next minute it's gone, it's forgotten. And so that's because they have sometimes it can be referred to as a positive bias. And again, if we don't cultivate this mutual appreciation, we have that very small emotional bank account. The challenges start to seem very big, and you can actually develop a very negative bias towards your marriage, which is very unhealthy.
Mm-hmm. So the ability for couples to repair disagreements is directly related to the strength of their friendship, which comes about by this mutual appreciation. And that mutual appreciation fosters that mutual respect. So when that's there, it's much easier, as my husband says, for couples to repair their disagreements. Because happy couples, they actually have just as many disagreements as distressed couples. But the difference is that because of this mutual respect and cultivating appreciation, they are able to accept the little repair attempts that come about in interactions. If my husband makes a light joke about how he blew it on something, if I don't have mutual respect or appreciation, I'm just going to sneer at that and contempt's going to come in. But if I see that he's trying to lighten it up and make fun of himself and yeah, he blew it, and you have a happy relationship, it's much easier to accept the repairs that the other person makes. And that's what helps happy couples get through their disagreements. So having this mutual respect and appreciation and building our friendship goes a really, really long way to not only a happy marriage, but being able to weather the difficulties.
And again, we're just not just talking about relationships and not just talking about marriage here. We're talking about Vaishnava relationships and Vaishnava marriages. And Prabhupada, he also described that how a Vaishnava, he appreciates the service of other Vaishnavas. Mm-hmm. And Prabhupada said that is, how did he refer to it as? He says, this is the way of Vaishnava thinking, Vaikuntha thinking. Prabhupada said that is Vaikuntha thinking, to have this attitude of appreciation. So what we're doing in our lives at this exact moment and at every moment is we are practicing to go back to the spiritual world and to develop that way of Vaishnava thinking, Vaikuntha thinking, Vrindavan thinking. And we shouldn't think that what we're doing at every moment in our lives is not related to that journey back to Godhead. Because if we can practice these values in this life, that is what is going to transfer us to the spiritual world. It is not just that all our bad behaviors and patterns are just going to automatically disappear. But as Srila Prabhupada said in the 14th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, he describes that by practice, one has to cultivate the activities of goodness. And this mutual respect and appreciation it's part of the culture of living in goodness, and not just living in goodness, but learning to live in goodness to elevate ourselves to the platform of pure goodness, Shuddha Sattva, where we actually have this vision of how we're doing this for the satisfaction of Krishna.
And sometimes we can fall into the trap that, well, my partner is not a devotee, so why should I respect them? You should respect them because they are a spirit soul, part and parcel of Krishna. They offer you so much help, so much support, and we need to see that everyone is inherently a devotee of Krishna, and treat them in such a way, and that will help to elevate them. So we shouldn't think that mutual respect doesn't need to be there. It needs to be there with every living entity, and appreciate even though there's differences. Even when we feel that we have to tolerate another person, the only way we can actually tolerate is if we appreciate that even though they're different, they have many good qualities also. And maybe we have to tolerate one aspect of their personality, but if we have that respect and general appreciation, we can see that, oh, they have other good qualities that I can really appreciate and be grateful for. So Vaishnavism must extend itself to all living entities. So I think it's a really important point to keep in mind.
And again, we mentioned in the beginning of this sessions on the principles and values, your happiness in life comes from living your values. And if we clearly envision the Vaishnava values we want to imbibe and live in our life, that is going to lead us towards spiritual happiness. And if we do not have a map or view of those important values, then in times in our lives when the challenges come, the differences of opinion, the frustrations, without envisioning those values, we're just going to react impulsively as Krishna says, according to the modes of material nature, which generally tend to be the modes of passion and ignorance. And we tend to have very non-constructive relationships. So again,
I would say destructive
yeah,
relationships.
So by embracing these values and making a concerted effort to apply them in our lives, and see that that we should actually appreciate that maybe my spouse is doing something to frustrate me. We should appreciate, okay, here's an opportunity for me to practice one of those values.
And there's probably something I need to learn here.
Yes, yes. And we can see that, we can think, why is this happening to me? Or we can think, what can I learn from this? What does Krishna want me to learn from the situation? And those situations are being presented to us monthly, weekly, daily, hourly, and even moment to moment. Krishna's giving us those opportunities.
So the quality of our relationships equals the quality of our life. So we need to strive to have good relationships full of mutual respect and lots and lots and lots of appreciation. So maybe we can open it up. If there's any questions, we can take some this time.
We have a comment from Ludmila. Hare Krishna, please accept my humble obeisances. Thank you very much for such a wonderful session. And how can I behave in a situation when my spouse thinks that it is more valuable to serve outside of family than to take care of the family?
You have to help him to see that his family, your family, is also a very important part of your spiritual life and a very important part of your mission to Srila Prabhupada. And that's not something different. And just like if we all think that, maybe what are our children going to think of us after we're gone? And we could imagine that our children might say, well, my parents were really nice devotees and they did lots of service in the temple, but they didn't care much about us. And then sometimes we wonder why some of these children are not that enthused about taking to Krishna consciousness, because we haven't really seen them also as devotees and nurtured their spiritual life by giving them the association they need. And especially children, sometimes that association means, as a parent, just coming down to the level of your child, being their friend, playing with them, doing activities with them. It's extremely important for parents to spend quality time with their children and to understand that raising their children is a very important service to Srila Prabhupada. And Srila Prabhupada told us to one of our god sisters who she had that
same thought.
Same thought.
Better for her to serve at the temple.
Mm-hmm. And Srila Prabhupada told her that Krishna has given you these children. They are Vaikuntha children. You should take care of them very carefully. And he said, do not be confused about this.
So I think what my husband's saying is that we are actually confused, that we don't see it as devotional service. Now your question is, how do I get my husband to change? You can't get anyone to change. You can only change yourself. So I think that part of it is the culture in our devotee communities needs to change so that everyone can help us to see things in the proper way. What exactly devotional service is. It's not just something only at the temple. We have to see that our relationships are a huge, huge part of our devotional service. What was that quote by Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj?
In essence, what he was saying, that your behavior with others determines your entry into the spiritual world. Because if we behave in ways that are not really in the mode of goodness and moving towards pure goodness, we cannot get entrance into the spiritual world.
So your husband may be treating you well. He just may be spending not enough time that your needs aren't met and your kids' needs aren't met. So the best thing to do is just to develop a good relationship, still have that mutual respect, appreciate what he does do, and nicely request for specific things that you need. Just saying you don't spend enough time at home or with the kids, it doesn't tell them exactly what you need or why you need it.
And if you complain, if you express those needs by complaining, you will get less of what you want. But if you make the compassionate requests of how, when your husband does spend, some time with your family, how it adds value, express to him how much appreciation you have for the value it adds to your children, the value it adds to you, and then give those positive reinforcements, gradually change will happen. It may not happen overnight, but change occurs by exhibiting compassion and saying what you need compassionately, and compassionately and appreciatively giving us appreciation for when he does meet the needs of your children and your family. So extremely important advice that Uttama is giving, that don't complain. It's counterproductive. You have to request compassionately. Because
men or anybody, they don't feel respected when we're just complaining at them also. So we're not giving the mutual respect. Are there any other questions? Okay, so thank you all very much. And we'll let you practice increasing your efforts of mutual respect and taking time 2 or 3 times a day to express appreciation to your partner, to your children, for the ways in which they bring value to your life, the little things they do that you appreciate. So until next week, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.